What if I told you that the reason you can't sleep and the reason you can't lose weight are caused by the exact same thing? Not stress, not blue light, not your mattress. One invisible biological system that most doctors don't test, most nutritionists don't talk about, and almost nobody has heard of. It's called your sleep pressure thermostat. And once you understand how it actually works, not the pop science version, the real physiology version backed by decades of research, everything about your sleep, your energy, and even your metabolism is going to make sense in a way it never has before. Stay with me, because what I'm going to show you in the next 10 minutes is going to completely change how you think about the night. Now, most people think about sleep the way they think about a battery. You run it down during the day, you charge it up at night. And the advice that follows from that model is go to bed earlier, sleep longer, maybe take melatonin. And on the surface, it sounds logical. But here's what that model gets completely wrong. The battery model puts the control in your hands. It says if you're not sleeping well, it's because you're doing something wrong. You're not being disciplined enough about bedtime. You're on your phone too late. You had coffee too close to the evening. And while those things matter at the margins, this framing misses the actual mechanism entirely. Because the body doesn't treat sleep like a battery to be filled. It treats sleep like a thermostat set to a target. And just like the fat thermostat I talked about in another video, the sleep pressure thermostat has a set point, and your body will defend that set point aggressively, whether you like it or not. The real question, the one that almost no one is asking, is not, how do I sleep more? The real question is, what is controlling my sleep thermostat, and why is it set wrong? Let's look at what the science actually shows. And I'm going to take you through some classic studies here, not obscure fringe research, but work published in the most prestigious journals in sleep medicine over the last 30 to 40 years. The first piece of evidence comes from what's known as sleep deprivation studies. Researchers took healthy adults and selectively reduced their slow-wave sleep, that's the deep restorative phase, by about 25% over just 3 nights. They did this not by waking people up completely, but by playing soft tones that disrupted the depth of sleep without fully rousing the subjects. What happened? Within those 3 nights, the participants' insulin sensitivity dropped by 25%. That is equivalent to aging their metabolic function by a decade. And critically, their hunger hormone, ghrelin, rose significantly, while their satiety signals dropped. The participants weren't sleeping less in terms of total hours. They were just sleeping shallower. And their body's thermostat had already registered the deficit and started compensating by increasing hunger and reducing metabolic efficiency. Now here's the part that makes this really important. When the researchers restored normal sleep architecture the following nights, the hormonal imbalance corrected. The insulin sensitivity came back. The hunger hormones normalized. That is not a psychological effect. That is your sleep thermostat directly governing your metabolic set point, and the body defending it the moment conditions change. A second set of findings, this one from circadian biology research going back to the 1980s, showed that the timing of sleep relative to your internal clock matters as much as the duration. Shift workers who sleep the same total hours, but at the wrong time of their biological clock, show persistently elevated cortisol, chronically suppressed leptin, and significantly higher rates of metabolic syndrome. The thermostat isn't just measuring how much sleep you get, it's measuring when you sleep, relative to a deeply encoded biological rhythm, one that's been calibrated over thousands of years of evolutionary pressure. So here's the insight I want you to sit with for a moment, because it changes everything. Most people think, I'm not sleeping well, so I feel terrible, I'm hungrier, my metabolism is sluggish. And yes, that is true. But the causation runs in both directions. A dysregulated sleep thermostat doesn't just cause those downstream effects. Those downstream effects, the high cortisol, the insulin resistance, the elevated inflammation, also disrupt the sleep thermostat. You end up in a loop. And this is exactly why just sleep more doesn't work for most people struggling with this. You can't manually override a thermostat that's been recalibrated by hormonal signals. It's the same logic as telling someone with a dysregulated fat thermostat to just eat less. They will eat less for a while, and then the thermostat will crank up their hunger signals until they compensate. The solution was never willpower. The solution is always find what's controlling the thermostat and address that upstream lever directly. So what controls the sleep thermostat? The answer, just like with body fat regulation, is hormones. Specifically, there are three hormonal systems that either set your sleep thermostat too high or too low, and we know this with a high degree of confidence because we can manipulate these systems pharmacologically and watch the sleep architecture change in real time. The first is cortisol. Cortisol follows a natural rhythm. It should be highest in the morning, dropping steadily through the day, and reaching its lowest point in the late evening before sleep. When that rhythm is disrupted by chronic stress, by eating late, by artificial light exposure in the evening, cortisol stays elevated when it should be falling. And an elevated cortisol level in the evening is essentially a signal to your brain that says, "Threat detected, stay alert." The sleep thermostat reads that as, "Not safe to enter deep sleep yet." And so the depth and quality of your sleep degrades. Not necessarily the duration, you might still lie in bed for 8 hours, but the architecture is compressed, and you wake up feeling like you barely slept. The second system is adenosine. Adenosine is a byproduct of cellular energy use that accumulates in the brain throughout the day, creating what's called sleep pressure. The longer you've been awake, the more adenosine has built up, the stronger the pressure to sleep. This is the one part of the battery model that's actually correct. But here's what disrupts it: caffeine. Caffeine works not by giving you energy, but by blocking adenosine receptors. It essentially mutes the signal without clearing the adenosine itself. So when the caffeine wears off, all of that accumulated adenosine hits at once, the so-called caffeine crash. And if caffeine is in your system when you try to sleep, it compresses your slow-wave sleep by up to 20%. Even if you can fall asleep just fine. The thermostat is blunted. The deep restoration doesn't happen, and you wake up reaching for caffeine again. The cycle perpetuates itself. The third system is insulin. This brings it full circle back to what you eat and when you eat it. A high-carbohydrate meal eaten close to bedtime spikes insulin in the late evening. Elevated insulin suppresses growth hormone release, and growth hormone is one of the primary drivers of slow-wave sleep depth. The body cannot maximally release growth hormone in the presence of high insulin. So you eat late, your insulin is up, your growth hormone is suppressed, your deep sleep is shallow, you wake up groggy, your cortisol is dysregulated the next day, and the cycle runs again. It is a thermostat that has been knocked off its calibration point, and it will keep pulling back toward that miscalibrated set point until you address the upstream inputs. So now the real question, what do you actually change? And I want to be clear that I'm not talking about sleep hygiene tips you've heard 100 times. I'm talking about adjusting the upstream hormonal inputs, the things that set the thermostat. 1. Anchor your cortisol rhythm with morning light. Getting bright natural light into your eyes within the first 30 to 45 minutes of waking up sets the timing signal for your entire circadian system. It tells the brain day has started, begin the cortisol countdown. The earlier that clock starts, the further cortisol has fallen by the time evening arrives. You're not hacking your sleep, you're resetting the hormonal clock that governs it. 10 minutes outside, no sunglasses, within 45 minutes of waking. That's it. 2. Manage your adenosine window. Cut caffeine by early afternoon. Most people need at least 8 to 10 hours of clearance for the adenosine receptor sites to be open again by sleep time. And if you wake up feeling unrefreshed and reach for coffee immediately, wait 90 minutes. Let your naturally rising cortisol do its job first. Using caffeine to override the morning cortisol peak creates a dependency loop that compounds over time. 3. Create an insulin trough before bed. This doesn't mean you need to fast aggressively. It means your last meaningful carbohydrate intake should ideally be at least 3 hours before sleep. If you do eat closer to bed, prioritize protein and fat over carbohydrates. The insulin response is far lower, and you preserve the growth hormone window that drives your deep sleep. Some data even suggests that a small amount of glycine, found naturally in bone broth or collagen, actually supports sleep onset and slow-wave depth. 4. Lower your evening core temperature. The body needs to drop its core temperature by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate and maintain deep sleep. A cool room, around 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, helps enable this. A warm bath or shower, 60 to 90 minutes before bed, paradoxically also helps. It draws blood to the surface of the skin, accelerating the core temperature drop when you step out. You're not warming yourself to sleep, you're triggering the rapid cool down that signals to the thermostat. Conditions are right, begin deep sleep. What all four of these have in common is that none of them are about willpower or discipline. They are all about adjusting the hormonal and physiological inputs so that the thermostat recalibrates naturally. You're not forcing sleep, you're creating the conditions under which the thermostat does what it was always designed to do. Remember what I said at the beginning, that sleep problems and metabolic problems are caused by the same thing? Here's what that looks like in practice. A person with a dysregulated sleep thermostat wakes up groggy, reaches for caffeine, blunts their adenosine system, has elevated cortisol throughout the day, craves high-carbohydrate food to manage that cortisol, eats late, spikes insulin before bed, suppresses growth hormone, sleeps shallowly, wakes up groggy, and does it again the next day. That is not a sleep problem. That is a thermostat problem. And treating the symptom, the bad sleep, without addressing the upstream hormonal dysregulation is exactly like treating the hunger from a miscalibrated fat thermostat by just trying to eat less. It works temporarily and then the body overrides you. The research is unambiguous here. The depth of your sleep governs your insulin sensitivity, your cortisol rhythm, your hunger hormones, your inflammatory markers, and your cognitive performance the following day. Sleep is not passive recovery. It is the most hormonally active period of your entire 24-hour cycle, and the thermostat governing it responds to upstream inputs: light, timing, food composition, and temperature, not to effort or intention. So if you take one thing from this, stop trying to force better sleep and start asking what's setting the thermostat wrong. Because once you answer that question correctly, the sleep follows naturally. And everything downstream of the sleep, the energy, the metabolism, the mood, begins to recalibrate as well.